Okay, good morning, everybody. Hope you had a good festival season. From this class onwards, we shall be starting with the ALS evaluation, IoT evaluation board, which is in front of you now. I want to go in a slightly different approach for working out the sensors and the different aspects of sensor data. Let me just reason it out before I begin my session, because this is something which make a lot of difference to the way we approach to the given problem. I just watched out few IoT syllabus that runs in the form of workshop, runs in the form of internship program and so on. And the approach was to give an introduction to the different sensors that are attached with any of the microcontroller board. In our case, it is Raspberry Pi. I will take a slightly different approach. I'm actually, it is not very sensible to just see how to take read the data from each sensor and don't know what to do next. Reading the data from sensor can be done by the very basic Python codes. Probably it has also been given to you in the kit itself. In the kit itself, probably it is available. In the desktop, there is a folder, and in that folder, I think the boards, this basic experiments are available. That is how to read the values from the sensor. The question is not about how to read the values from the sensor. The question is what to do with the data that you have read from the sensor. Reading the data from sensor is not a big deal. It is a very basic experiment number 0 that you may do with that sensor, any sensor. For example, you have a humidity and temperature sensor over here, and whenever you seek data from this device, it will give you humidity and temperature. The next thing is what to do with that data. I want to give more emphasis onto the question what to do with the data that you read from the sensor. What next? Okay. This gives me two things. One is when can I trigger the reading of data? That is at what times I should read the data. I'll give a little more elaboration onto this in the later point of time, but just to give you a feel of my approach. The first thing is to understand and analyze at what times I should read the data. I mean, there should be a trigger, right? It may be, say, after every 1 hour. So at now the time is nearly 11 o'clock. So at 11 o'clock, 12 o'clock, 1 o'clock, and so on. Every hour I should read the data. Now, can this be done manually? Obviously not, because I cannot keep the machine on and give the triggering pulse to read the data every 1 hour. So can it be automated? So this is one approach. Is there any other way of triggering remotely? Maybe by pressing one of the key here, I can trigger the data. I mean, trigger the reading of values. I mean, initiate the reading of the value. That's what I mean by trigger. Or can I trigger the reading? I mean, can I initiate the reading process by sending a command from remote place, or maybe through a browser? Obviously, this Raspberry Pi must have been connected to internet, if that is a possibility. Or can this be a periodic event, like I mentioned in the beginning, every 1 hour, or every 10 minutes, or every 15 minutes? Can I do this automated things? The next thing is, where do I send this data? Okay, where do I send this data? Who is the consumer of this data? you would have read the temperature as say some 29 degrees and humidity as about 60%. Now, who is going to consume this data? Who is the consumer? That also need to be analyzed. So I would like to give, at least I have listed down around 10 to 12 such consumers for the data, in the sense, like one simple possibility is I will simply read the data every 1 hour or every 10 minutes and file the data into an CSV file locally. Okay, CSV file, comma separated value file, which can be opened in a simple notepad or even in an Excel sheet. So in a CSV file, I can dump this data, but I should also add the timestamp at which the data is read. So I will add the timestamp and write the data into a CSV file. Or in a little more complex way, if I try to code it, I can send the data to a Google spreadsheet located in a Google Drive. That is also possible. Or I can send it to an IoT platform. There are dozens of them available. You can send it to any of the IoT platform. We will be working on thingspeak.com for our experimental purpose, which is fairly good enough for the learning purpose. So can we send it to thingspeak.com? So first one is when to trigger the reading of data, how to trigger the reading of data. Second is how do you decide on the consumer? Who is the consumer of the data? I mean, where are you going to dump this data? The third one is what to do with the data. Suppose if the temperature is high or temperature is low, is there some action that you can take? So these are the three things that we need to give emphasis on. And this is applicable to most of the sensors here. So once you understand all these basic things or basic idea about the triggering of the event of reading the data, then deciding who is the consumer and accordingly writing the code. Like for example, I read the true temperature and humidity, and I can send it even by a mail. I can email it. I can email it to my specified customer or specified email ID. The value can be sent. Then he will decide what to do with the data. That is for his consumption. Okay. So these are some approaches that I would like to go with. So for that purpose, I may be beating more around this device, that is a humidity and temperature sensor, and the same concept can be extended to other sensors like this distance sensor or gas sensor or your moisture, soil moisture sensor, and so on. Okay. So given the idea for one sensor, that can be extended to any other sensor. Okay. So maybe in today's class and next class, so we'll be beating around a few other things because we need to know what are things that you can do with this 4 keys here. And also there is a buzzer and LED, sorry, buzzer and relay over here. These two actually doesn't come under any sensor, but they are something which can, they're all actuators. I mean, LED I will consider it as an actuator because it is something you need to give a trigger when it should be turned on, and there is nothing that you can read from this. Okay, it is always a right device. LED you can make it on or make it off. There is hardly anything to read from that except the status of it. Okay, there is nothing you can read from this. Similarly, a switch is an input device. You can turn it on or turn it off. You cannot write anything to it. Okay, and if I extend the same concept, buzzer is an output device. I can just make I can give the voltage and make it turn on, make some sound. And the relay is also like that. I can just turn it on and off so that some devices connected to the output contacts can be turned on or turned off. As simple as you can turn on a simple bulb over this. This is a 5 ampere connection actually. So you can connect something and turn it on or turn it off. Okay. So these devices are very simple. Switch, LED, buzzer, and relay, because operating buzzer and relay is as similar to turning on and turning off of LED. Okay, and the other two components which I'll be mainly focusing on is this humidity and temperature sensor and the distance sensor. Okay. As far as reading the sensor is concerned, yes, I think the sample codes are given. If you say that it's not available, I will make it available to you. There is not an issue. That is the basic reading of this thing. Another very important thing that we would like to see here is how can you incrementally develop the Python code. Say I may have a simple code to read the data from this, and I want to extend it further, like to decide on, to write the code for who is going to be the consumer of this data. For example, I want to add some more code to this so that the data can be emailed to somebody. Okay. So at that time, I don't have to repeat my first code. I can somehow include it in my second code in a different way. So there's actually a Python coding strategy. So maybe end of the day, or maybe in a couple of sessions, I should be able to get that idea also, how to write the incremental code and reuse the code that you have already written before. Okay. In today's class, maybe after another 5 minutes or so, we will be learning to understand how to operate on these keys and LEDs, and if time permits, buzzer and relay also. There are about 4 or 5 experiments listed. I have not sent the code by mail now. I'll send it at the end of the class. The reason is I don't want you to just take the code, open the code, and execute it. I wanted to go through the code line by line, and that can happen only when we type it on the terminal. So, though this is not my strategy, let me just explain the code and display it so that you can also type it and execute it. And it is only when we see that there are some missing spellings or wrong spellings, or for whatever reason the code doesn't work, and you debug, and there's a way we understand the working of the code as well as the basic working principle of the program. Okay. Let me just tell you one or two points with respect to the operation of the Raspberry Pi with respect to the different components connected in the form of sensor or switch or LED or whatever it is. Okay. Now, basically, GPIO pins. So when I say GPIO pin, it is actually 40 pin header is there in this Raspberry Pi, and in fact, on the board it is connected with a ribbon cable. Okay, it's already connected with a ribbon cable. So when I say pin, I am referring to the 40 pins that are underneath this connector. Okay, this pin numbering. How this pin numbering is done? This is very important to know. There are two ways in which the pins are numbered. One is called the board mode. There are two modes in which the pins are numbered. One is the board mode, and another is the BCM mode, Broadcom. Broadcom is the IC maker of that processor, Broadcom make. Okay, Broadcom mode. This numbering format is different from this. This is the normal sequential order, 1, 2, 3, 4 up to 40. Okay, and maybe I can show you that numbering. Just 1 second. Yeah, I hope you can see this. Okay, this is the numbering scheme adopted by the two different methods. Now, what numbers that you see on the inside of the square red square box? This is the board number. You have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Is a sequential number. Goes on up to 40. 1 to 40. Okay. Whereas the Broadcom number, BCM mode, in the BCM mode, the numbers are different. So you have the voltages, different voltage, 3.3 and 5 volts here, and you have ground. But you can see that For example, the pin number, the board pin 5 is actually named as GPIO 3. Okay, so in a BCM mode, this is the pin number 3, whereas in the board mode, this is the pin number 5. Or if you come somewhere here, pin number 36. In the board mode, this is pin number 36, whereas in the BCM mode, it is pin number 16. Okay, so this is something which we need to be very careful when we do the coding. But remember, when in a given experiment or in a given project, I'll be using only one mode. Of course, I cannot use mixed mode. Okay, because I have to tell it in the beginning which mode of numbering is used, BCM mode or board mode. So if you use board mode, you cannot use BCM number. I mean, you will be addressing the wrong pin. Okay, so that's very important. In a given project or in a given experiment, you can have only one kind of mode, either board mode or BCM mode. But it is advisable to use BCM mode for many good reasons. Okay. One more point I would like to mention is, as far as our experiments are concerned, maybe in a given session we may be doing 3, 4, 5 experiments. So within these 3, 4, 5 experiments, it's better if we don't change the mode from one to another, because we finish our experiments maybe in 10 minutes, 15 minutes, and within that next experiment will be on a different mode. Most of the time, if you have not closed your pins properly in the previous session, then you may end up in some kind of error that board mode cannot be changed. Okay, so for that reason, I prefer to use BCM mode continuously or in all the experiments. But incidentally, the sample programs given by ALS, most of them refer to the pins in the board mode. Okay, so but in the programs that I am using, I have except for one or two very basic things, for the sake of illustration, I'll be using the BCM mode of numbering. Okay. This is actually the Raspberry Pi screen that you are seeing. I have just taken it on my laptop and streaming it to the session. Okay. Okay. One more thing. Use the command pinout on command prompt to display pin numbers. Now you won't get that diagram. Of course, I got this diagram from internet. If you just say RPI or Raspberry Pi pin number.
Sorry to interrupt you.
Yeah.
Can you once again brief out the difference between BCM mode and board mode?
No, I'll come back to this. I'll come back to this. No, BCM is Broadcom mode. It is done by these numbers are given by the Broadcom IC manufacturing people, and these numbers are just your board pins, your sequential. Just like in any IC, you count the pin numbers sequentially 1, 2, 3, 4 up to n. Okay, so when it is a board pin, it is a sequential counting, as indicated here: 1, 2, 3, 4 up to 39, 40. The Broadcom pin number is, for example, this pin number 4 is VCC. Of course, there is no Broadcom equivalent. This 6 number is ground. This 8 number is GPIO 14. So I should not call this as pin number 8. I should call it as pin number 14 if I am using BCM mode. Okay. I think I'll come back to this once again when I discuss some programs a little later. Okay, sir.
Okay, sir. Okay.
Yeah. Just we need to remember at this point of time that there are two methods or two modes in which we can count on the pin number, and in a given experiment, I cannot switch over from one to another. Okay, I cannot switch over from one to another in a given experiment. Maybe you can do, if suppose first experiment you do it with the board mode numbering. In the second experiment, you can do BCM mode numbering, provided you have closed all the pins, because there is in software you should release all the pins. Whatever, suppose you are using 4 pins in one experiment, you should release all the 4 pins by using a command called close, so that all the pins will be closed, and then you can use it once again in another experiment using this mode. But for a given project, suppose you are doing a big project, it is always better you decide on which mode you want to work with, and that mode will remain fixed for the entire experiment, for the entire project. Okay. But now we are doing experiments within 10 minutes, 15 minutes, we'll be changing one experiment to another experiment. So at that time, this confusion can occur. So for that reason, as a policy, we should, as far as possible, I'll be using BCM mode. Okay. Maybe there will be one or two experiments where I'll be using bold mode because for the sake of illustration. Okay. Now, where do I get this pin numbering? This is an internet picture, but I can also get this very handily by using one command called pinout. Okay, I'll just illustrate that. In fact, you can go to your shell scripting command prompt here. Okay, you can open the command prompt and just give one command called pinout, P-I-N-O-U-T. Okay, so if you give this pinout command, there are some information about the system on chip number and what is the memory used, all those things. Leave that for the time being. But now here you can see the various pins 1 to 40. The inside numbering is the bold numbering 1 to 40, and what is written in the outside in color is the GPIO numbering, or it's a Broadcom numbering. Okay, and anytime you can make a cross consultation. Suppose if somebody has given you a program in bold mode, by looking at this, I can convert it very easily into the BCM mode. Okay. So the command here is pinout. Okay. So you just have to use this command pinout on the command prompt. You will get the pinout of the Raspberry Pi. Well, I hope all of you are able to get this pinout. This is a very handy command for knowing which pin is which. Okay. Now, if you have already tried something on this Raspberry Pi board or on this IoT kit, in experiments which deal with the sensors, or in experiments which deal with all these actuators, you would have come across with one module to be imported in the Python code called rpi.gpio. This is one of the module which is pre-installed already. It's already installed in the Raspberry Pi version. I mean the software that you're using. This Python module is already installed. So this is one module that can be used to work with the IO pins. So this gives you the facilities to set something onto the, for example, if you want to turn on the LED or turn off the LED or read something from the key or activate any other device, because we have to set, for example, if you are using GPIO 3, then I should say that GPIO 3, what am I going to connect to that pin? So whether it is an input pin or whether it is output pin, then if it's, for example, if LED is connected to that, by writing 1 to that, I can turn on the LED, or by writing 0 to that, I can turn it off. Okay. So to do this, one module is required, one library is required. So one such library which is contemporarily used since some time, ever since the Raspberry Pi is introduced, is rpi.gpio. This is one module. But there is another module which is very useful. In fact, that reduces your coding requirements drastically. Is called GPIO 0, General Purpose IO 0. Okay, because there are already few built-in modules in this, and I can access those modules very easily and make my devices operate in a very convenient manner. And the code, the size of the code also reduces sharply. I'll say almost 50% to what this fellow uses. Okay. So these are the two modules that we'll be using. I'll give you illustrations on both of them. But for the basic reading, I may be using this GPIO 0 because it's very easy to understand very easy to understand and very easy to write the code using GPIO 0. This is comparatively recent, maybe about 3-4 years old, and there is good documentation. But in the ALS sample codes that he has given, he has not used GPIO 0. He has used only RPI.GPIO. These are the two modules. Okay. Now, coming to board specific, I'll just spend about a couple of minutes on this LED, these two slides, and then we will take on a code. In the evaluation board, you'll be able to see the 4 LEDs and the buzzer and relay. I'll just switch back to that diagram. Probably you can easily locate it. Okay. So these are the 4 switches and 4 LEDs. Okay. And this is the relay and buzzer. This is the buzzer and this is the relay. Now let me just tell you what type of connection is required to make this fellow operatable. I mean, you can read the data from switch, or I mean, you can read the status of switch, and you can write something into the LED. So few IO ports of this Raspberry Pi has been dropped down to this connector. Okay, it is 4 of them actually. 4 GPIO pins for LED and 4 GPIO pins for this 4 switches here. So 8 GPIO ports are brought into this connector, and 1 VCC, there is 5 volts, I think it's 3.3 volts, and 1 ground. So that's how it makes 10 pins here. So these 10 pins are connected to these 8 GPIO pins and VCC and ground. So this connection is there in this PCB. Okay, you can see that through this ribbon cable it has been extended, and those 8 pins plus 2 ground and VCC are coming here. And there is one more connector here to which these LEDs and switches are connected. You can almost say that the pinout of this and this are same. So you are also given with some ribbon cables along with the kit, okay, which are 10-pin ribbon cable, FRC cable it's called, and you can use those cable to connect from here to here. Okay, so if you connect these connector with this connector using the ribbon cable, it is possible to operate with these 8 devices, 4 LEDs and 4 switches, because now we have made the connection between these devices with the Raspberry Pi. So by writing code on this Raspberry Pi, you'll be able to control these devices. Okay. So in the same way, you can connect this RelayMate connector, is a 4-pin RelayMate connector, this one and this one, because to operate buzzer, I need only 1 port pin. I just have to enable write 1 to that or write 0 to that. If I write 1, it will start sounding. If I write 0, it will stop. So I need only 1 pin. And to operate relay also, I need only 1 pin. Well, in the earlier session, in the first session, probably I had a wrong statement made here that I can operate only one of these two together, but unfortunately it is not so. You can operate both of them together because each one of them require only 1 IO port. So in total 2 IO ports plus 1 VCC and ground. So you have 4 pins here. So 2 IO ports, 1 each for this buzzer and relay, and VCC and ground. So I can operate this together with the connection made here. I have to make this connection. Okay. So this connection will extend the Raspberry Pi pins to these devices. Okay. But here you have also a 16-pin, a 16 switch 4x4 array of switches here. This array of switches can be operated only if you don't wish to operate this, because of the lack of pin count. This also require in fact 8 pins. Okay, 4 for rows and 4 for columns. and I need 8 pins. So the same 8 pins that are available here is extended to this. So this connector, which is connected to the Raspberry Pi, can either be connected to this to work with these 8 devices, or it can be connected to this to work with these 16 devices. Because it's a matrix connection, I need only 8 ports to operate this matrix of switches or array of switches. Okay, so I cannot operate this part of the switches along with this part of the switch, either this or this. Okay, it's a mutually exclusive. Okay, now I just made a pin numbering here where this what I mean by LED 1, 2, 3, 4 is LED 1 is the topmost, LED 2, LED 3, and LED 4. Switch reading from left to right, switch 1, switch 2, switch 3, and switch 4. Okay. So for each of those devices, which of the board pins are used, and what is the corresponding BCM pin? I have marked this in bold. Okay, these are the board pins, and these are the equivalent BCM pins. So if you are setting the mode of pin numbering is BCM, I should use these numbers. For example, if I want to operate LED 1, I want to use 22 as the pin number if I have set the mode as BCM. If I have set the mode as board pin, then I have to use the number as 15. Okay. In the very first experiment, I think we are using board pin, but in the subsequent experiments, we'll be using BCM pin. I'll come back to this once again when we write the code. This is the other two numbers used for the buzzer and relay. For buzzer, the board pin used is 38, pin number 38, and the equivalent BCM pin is 20, and the relay is 36, and equivalent BCM pin is 16. And for operating buzzer and relay, I have to connect the Relimate connector RM9 to RM17. RM9 and RM17 are these two connectors. I think you can see numbering written here alongside this connector, though it is in a very small font. You have to make the right connection. That's very important. If you make a wrong connection, probably you'll end up in damaging the particularly these pins are very sensitive here. Okay, the pins in this Raspberry Pi is very sensitive, so you might end up in damaging that pin. So you should be very careful with the connection. And in most of the cases, the connectors that you need to connect, they are adjacent. Okay, but in some cases they are slightly far off, or they are not adjacent. The adjacent one is something different. Okay. For example, here the connection is these two, and here the connection is these two. So here it's pretty simple. When you operate with this LCD and 7-segment LED, there will be some issue because we may have to do this cross connection here. There was some probably there could be some mistake in the manual given. In fact, these whatever numbers that I have shown here, these things are available in the manual they have given. Maybe they have given you the printed copy, or they have given you the PDF. And either of them, I mean, the numbering is available. Okay. Yeah. Now coming to the experiments, I just listed a few experiments, and these experiments, okay. Now, the very basic experiments that we'll be doing is basic testing of LEDs, switches, and buzzer. And under that, the first experiment is LEDs will be turned on and when corresponding keys are pressed. Well, I have two programs here. This is the name of the files in which program is written. So one experiment will be making use of GPIO library, and the other experiment will be using that GPIO 0 library. And buzzer, an experiment to test the buzzer, an experiment to test the relay, and the buzzer and buzzer should go on when I press the key. So how to write a code for such event. Okay, so these are all different possibilities. In fact, why I have made these different code here is this kind of working I'll be requiring in the other experiments. Like when I am working with the sensor, I want the sensor to be read upon pressing a key. So how to detect a key is pressed, and how to upon key being the trigger, and then how to read the corresponding sensor. So that's the reason why I have included all these combinations. Okay, so let's start with our first code. I'll be first using LEDs will be turned on with corresponding keys are pressed. In fact, the code that I'll be using, first I'll be using the GPIO library. This is almost the same code that they have given. Okay, let me, I hope you can, okay, now onwards I'll be working with the Raspberry Pi itself. So whatever screen that you are getting here is from the IoT kit. Yeah, one more point I would like to mention here. Now, I may not continue coding with the Jupyter notebook for some reason, because in Jupyter notebook I will not be able to dump all these codes, and that is more useful for interactive working. And when it comes to sensors and reading sensors, I would like to take the flow continuously, because interactive mode doesn't work properly there. Okay, because there are some timings also involved, which cannot be properly controlled. So for each one of them, I'll be, all right, I have written a separate code, separate file. And anyway, I'll be sending you the code using Jupyter Notebook, and at the end of the day, because it will be in one file, and you can always copy that code into a file and save it as a separate file and execute it on your device, on your Raspberry Pi, or on your kit. Okay, so you can just try to I'll close these things. You can open this Python interpreter, which is available here under programming tab, Python 3. I hope it's available. So the first code that will be working is LED switch GPIO. Okay. Okay, it's not, I'm not able to increase the font size. I hope it's visible. Incidentally, I can control this from my laptop, or I can control it from the keyboard connected directly to the Raspberry Pi. Yeah, I hope it's visible. So what is there in this code is, these are just some comments. It says that program to test LEDs and switches. You need to do this connection CN9 to CN4. I think I mentioned that. And there is also a jumper on that LED and switch panel. That jumper is closed anyway. In case if it is removed, you can You have to need to put some jumper over that connection. Otherwise, the power supply will not be reaching the LEDs. Okay. Now I need two modules. One is the time module, import time, and another is I mentioned about this RPI.GPIO. So what happens when I write this code, import RPI.GPIO as GPIO? You have RPI.GPIO module, and for this program, I am renaming it as GPIO. Okay. So later I can refer to this module. Instead of typing capital RPI.GPIO, I can just type it as GPIO. You can even give any other name you wish to. Okay. So in this program, we are calling this module as GPIO, small GPIO. Okay. Now this is just about GPIO.set warnings false. This is about whether the warnings should be displayed or not. So you are disabling that warning display in that first line, GPIO.set warnings, set it to false. And in the next line, as I mentioned before, you are setting the mode in which you want to work with the code. Work with the board. Okay. So it is set here as GPIO.board. Remember, this first GPIO is remember, this board is actually defined. This is actually defined in this module. Okay. So we are calling that module as GPIO. So I am writing it as GPIO.board. Okay. So this is a very Python way of referring to some keyword which is defined inside this module. So this will for this program, I am setting the pin numbering as in board mode. So it will be simply the sequential numbering 1, 2, 3, 4 up to 40. Okay. And in these 8 lines, okay, while typing the code, you can avoid typing these comments. It is there to see that tomorrow when you open the code, you'll be able to understand what has been assigned to each one of these lines or what these pins are associated with. Okay, it's a sort of documentation. So here LED4 is just one variable name, and I'm assigning it to 5. If you look at this, LED4 is the name that we are giving, which refers to the LED number 4 on the board. There is the bottommost LED, and it is connected to the board pin 5. Okay. So this is the pin number. So the pin number that I have to write here is the pin number according to the board mode of pin numbering. Okay. So this 5 refers to the board pin numbering. LED number 3, that is the second from the bottom, is connected to board pin 3. LED 2 is connected to board pin 12, and LED 1 is connected to pin number 15. Okay. Similarly, the switches 4, 3, 2, 1, they are connected to the corresponding pins. If you give this, if you wrongly type these numbers, then probably you can imagine what will happen. For example, if I type this as 20 instead of 24, then physically you actually connected the pin to 24, but in the program you are telling that it is connected to 20. So obviously your code will not work. Okay. So this pin numbering is very important. When I do the wiring loosely on my own setup, I have the option to select these numbers. I can connect it to any port I wish to, but you are given with a board which is already pre-connected, so I'll have to use what it is connected. Okay, so I don't have any choice here. When I'm doing the wiring of the switches and the LEDs myself, I have the option to choose any of these pins. But since we are using a pre-designed board or a prefabricated board, I don't have any choice here. So I'll have to work with these pins only, because switch 4 is permanently connected to pin number 23. Okay. So these 8 lines will give you to which pin which device is connected. And in the next 8 lines, we will be, I hope you have typed this. In fact, for typing these things, you don't have to type each one of them. I can just type one line and copy paste it as many times and just change those characters. For example, here I need to, in the difference between first and second line is only this number. Okay, so I don't need to type this. I don't need to spend time to type this. Just type one line and copy paste it 3 times and just change these numbers. That's all I need to do. So what this line does is it sets this pin number, for example, here is LED 1. LED 1 number is 1 is 15, pin number 15. Pin number 15 is set as an output pin. So what is output pin? Output pin is something which can be written to. So under the program control, I can write either 0 or 1 to that pin. Okay, it is an output pin. Similarly, an input pin is from where I can read the data. Okay, I can read the value from that input pin. For example, switch 1, which is pin number 24, it is set as input pin, GPIO.in. So these are all the constants which are defined inside this module. So you only have to say that. So essentially what you are doing in these 4 lines is you are enabling or you are programming these 4 pins, pin number 24, 19, 21 and 23 as input pins, and these 4 pins, pin number 15, 12, 3 and 5 as output pins. That's all you do here, nothing more. Now this is something very basic that I need to tell if I am using GPIO mode. Sorry, if I am using this, if I am using this library, I need to explicitly tell whether which pin is connected as output, which pin is operated as input. Okay, so here I have defined which pin. Here I have defined which pin is what, whether it is input pin or output pin. All LEDs are marked as output pin. All switches are marked as input pin. Okay. Now I will go to the bottom of the code first, then I'll come back to this function. Now, what exactly should happen here is, for example, when I when I press switch 1, LED 1 should glow. Okay, when I press switch 1, LED 1 should glow. When I release that switch, it should go off. Okay, when I release that, it should go off. I'll just switch back to the PPT and just to make this. Okay. Now, when you press the switch, what will happen? The value read from the pin will be 1. Okay. When you press the switch, and as long as you keep it pressed, the value read will be 1. And when you release the switch, okay, when you release the switch, the value will be 0. Okay. So when you release the switch, the value is 0. So your program, whenever you press the switch, your program will read that switch and its value is read as 1. So whenever that value is read as 1, I need to turn on the LED, and once it is read as 0, I have to turn it off. That is, I have to make that output 0. Remember, turning on LED is simply writing 1 to that. Turning off LED is simply writing 0 to that, or true or false. So true here is considered as 1, false is considered as 0. Now, what this fellow will do, what this line will do is, maybe I need just 1 second. See, initially the value of that switch, for example, if it is switch 1, the value of that switch will be 0. Now, when I press the switch, and as long as the switch is pressed, its value is 1, or it will be 3.3 volts or 5 volts to whichever voltage it is connected. And when I release the switch, the value will go back to 0. So what is required here is I have to detect this event. Okay, I have to detect this event when this switch has, when this value has gone from 0 to 1. This event detection is very important. And also, as long as it is red, you also need to detect this event when it has gone to low. So when this switch is detected, when this event is detected, that LED has to be turned on. I have to write 1 to that. And when this event is detected, LED has to be turned. It has to be written with 0 so that it can be switched off. Okay. So that's what this program is doing all about. Now, this program is a little cumbersome in the sense it is a little longer. The next code that we'll be seeing this with the GPIO 0 library is very simple and very easily understandable. Okay. I want to do both of them just for the sake of clarity and also for the sake of knowing that there are two libraries that you can work with. And in most of the cases, GPIO 0 works, but in some cases, we may have to go back to this contemporary library that is RPI.GPIO. Okay. Now, what these 4 lines of code are doing is this will detect those events. Okay, it will detect those 4 events. Okay. For example, I think it's very easy to understand this in terms of the name of the function. GPIO dot, remember GPIO is the module name that we have imported. Now add underscore event underscore detect is actually a function which is available inside this GPIO module. So what this will do is it adds an event. Okay, it adds an event, and that event is nothing but it is to detect the rising edge. Okay, it is to detect this edge. Okay, incidentally, there is no separate code written to detect this. The same code will be, same event will continuously poll this until this fellow goes off. Okay, we'll see that in the code. So here, add an event. Okay, so an event detected. Where that event is to be detected? In switch 1. So essentially, you are telling in which pin. Switch, remember, switch 1 is nothing but pin number 24. So detect an event in pin number 24. Now, what is the event to be detected? It is the rising. Rising means rising edge. Now, recall that we call this as the rising edge and we call this as the falling edge. Okay. So it has to detect the event rising edge. Okay. It has to detect the event rising edge. Now, what to do when the rising edge is detected? So when the rising edge is detected, it has to call back a function. What is the function? That function is written here. This is that function. Okay. So I think this line is very simple. Bounce time is actually this refers to bounce time equal to 1 millisecond. This refers to the key bounce time because whenever a key is pressed, it is not going to be a very simple or very easy 0 to 1. Okay, there's always going to be few oscillations because key is mechanical. there will be few oscillations, and finally the value will settle to 1. So this time, how much time should you wait? Okay, how much time should you wait? Now this has been set to 1 millisecond. Okay, if you set, you can set it to, it depends on the property of the mechanical switch that you are using. So 1 millisecond is good enough for the switch that is on the board. Okay, so what this line do is, whenever an event is detected in switch 1, this function is called, this function is executed. Okay, this function is executed. That's all. And similar events are added to the other switches, switch 2, switch 3, and switch 4. So easily you can say that you are adding 4 events to these switches, so that the rising edges on all the 4 switches can be detected, and upon detecting the rising edge, this function is to be executed. Remember, it is the same function in all the cases. It can be different also, but this is a simple code in which same function is detected, and inside the function there is a detection which key is pressed, and then do the operation on the particular LED that you wish to operate on. Okay, so these 4 lines will detect those rising edges in the respective keys, and in case if switch 1 is pressed, what should happen? This function is to be executed. Now, probably in our Python review, we have not discussed much about the function. This is a very simple concept in Python, as you know that it is very much present in other languages as well. How do you define a function? Function is defined with the keyword def. This is the name of the function, and this is any arguments that you want to pass to the function. So def keyword, remember this D should come in the first column. That's very important, unless it is function defined inside another function. Okay, so this D is coming in the first column, def keyword, then name of the function, then the argument to the function. Argument to the function is these events. Okay, so it is just an event, and normally the event is replaced by the switches here. For example, if the event is detected in switch 1, if this event, rising event, is detected in switch 1 is passed on to this function. So the value of event will be switch 1. If it happens in switch 4, the value of event will be switch 4. Okay. Now, what are you? Okay, in the function definition, there should be a colon at the end. This is very important. Okay. So this is the function header, which ends with the colon. The only thing I can write after this is any comments. I can write any comment after this, but otherwise I should not write anything part of the code. In the next line, automatically the editor will provide you a tab here. I mean, it will provide you a indentation. Okay, 4 characters. So in the 5th character position, the next will start. So the entire body of the function, you can see that tab is there. Okay. Once you come back from this tab, or once you return back to the first column, as in this case, the function is ended. So the function ends at this line. Okay, function ends at this line. So this is the body of the function. This much is the body of the function, and this is not part of the function. Okay, this is just a new set of code. Probably in other languages, as in C++, you would have put a curly braces for marking this body of the function, but here curly braces are not used. It is an indentation which defines the body of the function. So now the first thing that is done inside this is, if event equal to switch 1, what should I do? Switch 1 is pressed. So what I should do is, I should turn on the LED. Okay, and then a small gap is given. Okay, a small gap is given, and then GPIO output is turned off. Okay, so the GPIO output is turned off. The same thing is repeated with the other keys. If the event is switch 2, then the LED is turned off, and after some time it is turned off. Then again, event is detected is switch 3, then LED is turned on and turned off. And if it is switch 4, it is again turned on and turned off. Okay. So this is the function which is called by this event. In case if any of these events are happening, this function is called. Okay. This is one part. This is the function definition, and this is your you're adding some events to your program. Okay, you're adding some events to your program. Actually, this will there's a concept of interrupt driven programs in maybe you have studied it in microprocessor or microcontroller earlier, interrupts of processor. So essentially what is done here is you are setting 4 interrupts. Okay, so whenever this key is pressed, whenever switch 1 is pressed, an interrupt is generated, and this is our interrupt service subroutine. Okay, though I am not using those terminologies as, too much here, essentially that's what is happening. And now just to conclude the program, now remember whenever I execute this program, the program has to wait for me to press some key, and when I press the key, it has to glow the corresponding LED and put it off, and then keep on waiting for me to press another key or whatever it is. So program should run indefinitely, and the only way I can terminate this program is by pressing Control C. Okay, so either I can press Control C, or I can in the Python shell I can give this interrupt execution, which is equivalent to Control C. Sometimes your keyboard will be dead when the program is executed. So in such cases, you can always use this interrupt Control C, interrupt execution. So you can just click on this interrupt execution. The program will be terminated. Okay. Now, how do you make this a continuous loop? So to make this continuous loop, I'll use one program construct like this. Okay. This try and except block. This is something which is available in other languages as well. Okay. So I'll just tell what is the meaning of this. What is done here is, in the try block, I have a couple of statements. Okay. So this statement will be executed, or there will be an attempt to execute this statement. And in case if there is a keyboard interrupt, like pressing Control C, okay, pressing Control C, then this block will be exited and this block will be executed. This is a comment actually. Okay, this block will be executed. Now when the Control C is pressed, what I want is I want to exit from the program. When I exit from the program, the first thing that I should do is I should release all these pins, because I have set these 4 pins as input pins and these 4 pins as output pin. So I should release them so that it will not be blocked. If I don't release it, it is blocked until I restart my Raspberry Pi. These pins will be blocked. I cannot use it for any other program. So I need to have a graceful exit from the program. So to exit from the program gracefully, I need to execute this gpio.cleanup. So this will release all those pins, and you are ready to go with another program. Okay. Now this sleep program is something which just waits. Okay. It will wait for 1 second. The more I mean, this concept will be understood with 2 or 3 more programs being executed. Okay, so I'll not spend much time on this as of now. So sleep will simply wait. It will wait for 1 second. When this number here is an integer, and whatever you put here is in terms of the seconds. Probably, I think this bounce time can be reduced. This one is actually second. Yeah, bounce time as a parameter, this is always interpreted as millisecond, whereas the sleep, which is from the time library, okay, time module, we have already remember that in the very beginning we have imported one module called time. So time dot sleep, okay. So the value is imported as, I mean, the value set here is 1. So this one correspond to 1 second. So there will be a sleep of 1 second means, okay. Whereas this one, bounce time equal to 1, the unit for this one is millisecond. This is nothing to do with the time module, okay. This is something defined inside your GPIO itself, and there this one is interpreted as in terms of millisecond, okay. So don't get confused why it is just 1 here and here it is seconds and here it is millisecond, okay. So here the definition itself, whatever integer that you put here, it will be interpreted as millisecond, and here whatever integer you put, it will be interpreted as 1 second or 1 second or 2 second. Even you can put a fraction value. If you want it to be in fraction, you can write it as 0.1. Okay, that is also accepted. So if you have already typed this, you can try to execute this program. But what I am expecting as an outcome is you should be able to press any of those switches and the corresponding LED should glow. You may experience some latency because the key may not respond very immediately, or when you release the key, the LED may not go off immediately. There may be some hold up that is mainly because of the way in which this function is written. That is actually sorted out in the next version of this code. Okay. So if you have already executed this properly, I mean, sorry, if you have executed this, typed this program, you can try to execute this. You may encounter some errors because of this indentation, because indentation is very properly followed, meticulously followed. For example, if this fellow has been typed in the first column, this itself will not be part of your function. Okay. There won't be any errors while typing this because it's very straightforward. Okay. The only possible error that I am suspecting, or any possible mistake can happen, is in typing this function. Okay. And this is a continuous while loop. This is how we, this is something that you do very often in embedded system. If you want to execute something continuously, then you use a while loop and give the argument as permanently true. Okay. So in fact, you can give it as while true, or you can give it as while 1. Both will be same. Or you can put any non-zero value here. Okay. Even if you can write 123, 1123, the effect is same. If you write anything other than 0, it is fine. It will be considered as while true. But for the sake of proper readability, let's write it as true only. So while true, this will actually avoid the 100% usage of the CPU. We are using one sleep one. Okay, so during that sleep, some other program can take over the CPU time. So if you increase this to 10 seconds or something, then your key may not respond for your latency of response maybe go up. So it's better you don't increase this number to a large value. Okay, 1 would be sufficient. So it just means that after every second, this program will be available. I mean, your CPU is available for other activities. Okay, or maybe I can run one more program in parallel. So when I execute this, I can execute this simply by this run module. If you have not saved it, it will ask for saving. Okay, and I'm actually getting some latency here in terms of key pressed and key released. That you will experience because of the way in which the function is written. Function is rather little inefficient. Okay, Actually, the right way to do this is I should write 4 different functions, one for each key, but we are managing with the one function. Okay, so that's one of the, maybe you can try this yourself. You can say it as glow LED 1 and just keep only these 3 lines in that function. Okay, this if is not required. Okay, and similarly glow LED 2, glow LED 3 and glow LED 4, and accordingly change these numbers here. This will be glow LED 1, 2, 3 and 4. Okay, so whenever that particular switch is pressed, that particular function is called. So you don't have to detect first which function, which switch is pressed, and then call the call statements to run that, turn on that LED and turn it off. Okay, so you can divide this into 4 different functions. In such case, probably that latency or the delay in the response can be avoided, or you can counter that. Okay, I hope it is. I'll just come out of that. Now, in case if this interrupt execution doesn't work, sometime it happens that even if I press this interrupt execution, the program will not be terminated. If it is terminated, you will get this keyboard interrupt, and you'll be able to see this command prompt in the Python console. In case if it is not able to execute, the only way is you have to press on this restart shell. Okay, you'll have to restart the shell, restart your Python shell. That way you can terminate that program. Okay. Only thing is, when you restart the shell, all the variables that you have defined here will vanish. Okay, all the variables you have defined in this program will vanish from the memory. And if you have used Control C, and if it has come out like this, all those variables will be available. Like if I say switch 4, you can see that that variable is very much present in the memory. But if I had to use this restart shell, all these variables that you have defined inside the program will go away. Okay, now should I wait for proceeding to the next experiment? Now, while typing this, these keywords has to be typed as it is. They should be in capital. Okay. And this is actually a keyword parameter. This is called keyword parameter. So I have to type this callback equal to. Okay, because this will be considered as a keyword parameter. I have to type this callback. If I don't type callback, it will be there may be an error. Okay, callback equal to glow LED. You're only giving a reference to the function that is to be executed when there is a event. Okay, you are not calling the function. I have not written the brackets here. Okay, if I write this bracket, then you will say that it is calling the function. So here I am not calling the function. Actually, it is only the reference to that function. Reference to which function to be called. Now, how it is to be called? It is this event will take care of that. What parameter to be passed to this function and so on. But here I am only giving some reference to that function which need to be called. So very important thing is these keywords has to be typed as it is in capital letters, because that is a possible error there in typing. And here in and out, okay, it has to be typed as it is. Then this GPIO, because I have given GPIO as a small case here, it is small case. Had you given capital case, this has to be in capital case. So exactly what way you have given here, that need to be typed here. And this switch 1, 2, 3, 4, it is a name that we have given. You have the liberty to choose a different name for this, and even this LED 1, 2, 3, 4. But once you have defined it here, the same name has to be used in the rest of the places in your program. That's very important. Okay. I'll go ahead with the next program. I presume that the code is working there. If there are any queries, we can sort it out. Now, the same program, I have rewritten this using GPIO 0 module. You can see that the total length of the code is only this much. Okay. And most of the things are getting repeated. Sorry. Now, GPIO 0 inherently uses the Broadcom pin numbering, BCM pin numbering. Okay. It uses BCM pin numbering. Now, in this line, I am importing two submodules from this GPIO 0. And those two submodules are LED and button. LED refers to the normal LED that we are talking about. Button refers to the switches. Okay. Now these two words has to be typed as it is, because that is how they are internally named in this GPIO 0. I presume that this GPIO 0 module is installed in the Python that you have in your kit. In case if it is not available, okay, you can just go to this Python. Sorry. The best thing to do is you can just type this, okay, on the Python console. Just type this import GPIO 0 just to verify that whether that module is pre-installed or not. Okay, so if it is pre-installed, then I'll get that module imported. Okay, so as you know, I can find out which version of the GPIO 0 is installed. Okay, there's some error, attribute error. Don't worry about that. GPIO 0 is installed anyway. In this case, in case if it is not installed, you can install it in a matter of 4 minutes by typing this command on the command prompt, sudo pip3, then install GPIO 0. Ensure that the net connection is available. Okay. It is a small module, not a very big one. Maybe 1 or 2 megabytes of the traffic will be data traffic will be there to download. and it will be installed within seconds in your system. Okay. In case if the module is not available, normally in the recent days it is pre-installed. Whenever you install this Python in Raspberry Pi, that will be pre-installed. Sudo, which gives you the administrator rights, pip3 install space GPIO 0. Okay. Now I will not press enter because it's already installed. Yeah. Now what we do in this program is these 8 lines once again define which pin is which. So I'm defining, so what I'm actually doing here is, remember these are the sub modules from GPIO 0. So here I'm creating an instance of LED. Okay. So LED 1, recall that in the earlier version of this program, LED 1 was equated with 15. That was equated with the pin number. Here I am not equating it with the pin number. Instead, I am creating one instance of this LED which is connected to BCM pin 22. Okay. Remember the board pin 15 which we have used in the previous program. It is pin number BCM pin 22. So I am using the BCM pin numbering. Explicitly, there is no need to mention that you are using Broadcom pin numbering because GPIO 0 inherently uses Broadcom pin numbering. Okay, so I need not specifically write a separate statement here to indicate that BCM is used. It is used by default. You'll have to do little bigger circus if you want to use other pin number here. Okay, so let me not get into that now. So LED 1 here is actually an instance of LED device which is connected on pin number 22, Broadcom pin numbering 22, BCM pin number 22. LED 2 is another instance of LED which is available on BCM pin 18. Similarly, LED 3 and LED 4. So we have 4 LED instances, or we are having 4 LEDs connected onto these 4 pins 22, 18, 2 and 3. Okay. Similarly, we have 4 buttons. Okay, internally it is called buttons in the GPIO 0 library, not as switches. Okay, doesn't matter. So we are creating 4 instances of button 1 in pin number 8. Remember, we had used it as 24 in the previous version of the program because we had used board number 24. Button 2, then button 3, pin number 9, button 4, and it is in pin number 11. Broadcom pin number, BCM pin number 11. Okay. So this just defines the instances of LED and instances of button. Now remember that here I have not told whether it is output pin or input pin. Now that is all taken care by this module. Okay. So if I say that LED is connected to this, automatically this library will take care to see that it is an output pin. Okay, and it is set as an output, and it will also initialize it to 0. That is all done by this. Okay, in fact I can provide all those things as an argument to this. Okay, additional arguments, but here all those arguments will be in the default state. Okay, which is 0. I mean the initial value of the output will be 0. Okay, so I am creating 4 instances of LED and 4 instances of the button. That's all. So a lot of coding is saved here. Now what should I do? I need not create any events here. All those things are automatically taken care of by this module. So what I now need to do is, whenever LED key 1 is pressed, button 1 is pressed, LED 1 should go on. and whenever it is released, it should go off. That's all I need. Okay. So once again, I'll use this try block to capture the Control C key. Okay. To capture the keyboard interrupt key, I will use this try block. So the program will try to execute this as long as the keyboard interrupt is not pressed. Okay. What you need to understand by this try except block is the program which is part of the try block will be executed as long as the keyboard interrupt has not occurred. If the keyboard interrupt has occurred, it will be captured and suddenly the program is shifted to this block, which is there in the try block, except block, sorry. So in the except block, I'm closing all those LEDs and buttons. Okay, I'm closing all those. In the earlier case, I could have closed it with a single command. There is a one difference here. I have to close them one by one. I'm closing the instance of LED 1, 2, 3, 4 and button 1, 2, 3, 4, and finally exit from the program. Okay, so this is a very simple code. Now inside this try block, once again I'm using a while loop. I'm using a while loop. And the while loop will continuously execute. And inside the while loop, you can see that some built-in functions are called. Button 1 when pressed. Remember, I have not defined this function. It is part of the module, part of the button module. Okay, it is part of the button class. I don't know if you have already come across with the object-oriented programming. In the object-oriented programming, there are some classes defined. In fact, inside this module, button is one class. And in that button class, there are some methods. And one of such method is this when pressed. Okay, so what will happen is, whenever I press this, that event is detected and LED dot on, LED is turned on. In fact, LED dot on is a function, okay, which is once you define LED 1, I can call some functions on that, like LED 1 dot on or LED 1 dot off, LED 1 dot blink, and so on. Okay, so here I'm giving a reference to that function LED 1 dot on. So when the key is pressed, that event is detected and LED goes on. And when it is released, now remember that this module will detect the rising edge as well as it will detect the falling edge. So when it is detecting the rising edge, it will turn on the LED and it will remain on until you release it again. When it is going off, when it goes from 1 to 0, it will be again detected. That event is detected and the LED goes off. Okay, the same thing is done with LED 2 or LED 3 or LED 4. Okay, don't worry about this pause. It is commented actually. You can remove that. This is not part of the code actually. Okay, and this is a continuous loop which will be executed non-stop. Okay, and so when I execute this, you will definitely experience an improved latency. Okay, the moment I press the key, instantly that key will turn on, which was not happening in the previous case. And the response from the keypad or response from these 4 keys and the LEDs is pretty fast. Okay, and as long as I press the key, the LED keeps on. Okay, okay, I can actually do the same correction in the previous program also, but I'll have to add 4 more events. Okay, you have added the events when the key is pressed. You have to add the events for when the key is released, and also you have to make some modification in the functions. So we have to define different functions for each of the key pressed. So with those modification, I think the previous program also can be made to respond properly. I'll just press the Control C here. Okay, so immediately it has come out of the program. In fact, if the LED 1 module is still present, okay, if I say on, it will be turned on. But because there is a restart of the kernel, in fact, kernel has been restarted in my case. All those buttons or all those instances of LED and button has gone off. Okay, it's vanished. Okay, yeah. These are the two very basic programs that I have kept it for today because there is a little bit of typing and we're doing the first part of coding. Took a little longer time. I think I will close it now, maybe in another 2-3 minutes. And in the next class, I'll be doing something which is I'll just another two programs or three programs are there, small ones. We will complete that. It's only few lines, not as big as this. We'll complete that maybe in less than about 15-20 minutes. And then I would like to introduce you to few utility programs. What I mean by utility is I need to know, for example, when I am uploading data to ThinkSpeak, or when I am trying to use internet, or I want to send mail to somebody, or I want to receive mail from somebody under Python programming control. Okay, under the control of the Python program, I need to first detect whether internet facility is available or not. Whether I need to find out whether internet connectivity is available or not. Okay, so I need to address few questions like how to know if net is available. Of course, I can easily browse through the Raspberry Pi and I can find out whether it is available. But I want to know this information inside my program automatically. So if the connection is available, it will send the email, or else it will at least give me a prompt saying that no internet is not available. Okay, how to know if internet is available? Okay, and the other utility is how to manage these emails under Python program control. Okay, these are some utility programs. Some email program is maybe about 10 to 12 lines, whereas this may be around 3 to 4 lines. Okay, and another very important one is whenever I want to do some net-based activity, I should know IP address. Okay, I need to know the IP address of my system. I can hard code it to my program. Okay, I can always hard code. For example, the IP address of my Raspberry Pi here is 192.168.1.5. Okay, I can hard code this information to my code directly, but if I take the program elsewhere, it will not work. Okay, but can I detect this under program control? Can my program itself will find out what is the IP address and use that IP address wherever it is required? Okay, so these are some there are some more utility program, but the immediate requirement is how do I know this? Okay, so we shall discuss and try to write one small utility code to do all these activities in the next class. And from there onwards, we'll be working with the sensors. And mainly, as I said in the beginning, I will go through the various aspects of the data. Okay, in the sense capturing the data. Okay, triggering the capture. That's what I mean. Capturing the data. Who is the consumer of data, that is sending the data to whom? Okay, to whom the data is to be sent, and how to use the data. Okay, how to use the data, in what all ways the data can be utilized. So these are the three aspects that we need to understand in IoT. Okay. Well, don't be under the wrong impression that IoT means it is always internet related. Of course, the basic definition do say that, but when it comes to the gambit of data consumer, the consumer need not be in the internet always. He can always even be in the intranet. Okay. For example, if you have to detect the water level in the water tank inside your campus, I don't really need an internet connectivity. What I need is the intranet connectivity. Okay. So it is basically, of course, the network is used anyway, but it can be intranet also. That is within the campus network. I may not really take the data into the cloud. Instead, it will be in a local server, which serves you the internet. Okay. So even these possibilities are also available. You may still be working with the browser, or you may still be working with any internet browser, but I really don't need to take the data into the cloud. Okay. So all these aspects we will see with respect to few sensors in the forthcoming classes. I think I'll close it for today. You can try to work out on these codes. I will send this code maybe in about within about 15 minutes, 20 minutes as two separate files of the same code that I have been working with, and then you can try to execute them. Maybe you would have already tried to execute the code. In case if at all there is an error, you can use those codes and try to get the output and understand this, what exactly is happening in this code. That's very important because some of these concepts of the code we'll be using straight away in the forthcoming sessions. Okay. So I'll close it for now. Have a good day.